That's an interesting theory. The idea of consciousness as an antenna or somehow working as an antenna, you're not the only one to talk about that as well. I've heard that before in different situations. I think they talk about it. Yeah, it's like, I've heard before, is the brain generating it, or is it more just receiving consciousness as an antenna? Many people
I can tell you something. In mechanical engineering, we had a class called mechanical vibrations. And in that course or class, you learn that everything has a natural frequency. For example, when you're thinking of a bar of steel, even if you're not disturbing it with an external force, it has its own natural frequency that it naturally vibrates at.
Right.
And as an engineer, you put this steel rod, you employ it or utilize it inside the machine to do something. For example, transfer power from a motor to a wheel. So it starts turning. So there's some external force being exerted onto that metal rod. And every repetitive motion, like turning with a motor or something like that, creates an external vibration on the thing. And what we calculated, or what we calculate, is the natural vibrational frequency of the rod should not go into resonance with an external force that's been applied to it.
Right, because it'll destabilize it.
Exactly. So there's this interesting thing. There's this interesting laboratory experiment we had to do. At certain frequencies, when you start turning the rod, nothing happens. But when you reach, for example, say 300 revolutions per minute, it starts showing a bending, but repetitively bending pattern. Then when you increase the speed, like when you reach 400 or 600, it again stabilizes. Nothing happens. You reach 600, then it starts bumping up and down. So there are certain critical speeds and certain critical frequencies that this thing is receptive to. So you try to avoid these critical speeds in your design. And I think the same thing is also true for anything in the known universe. So the brain is a very complex machine, and everything, there are neurons and stuff that's connected to one another. If you change the neuronal configuration of your brain, you automatically change the natural frequency of it. So it starts vibrating at different thing. So you can get in touch with certain information.
Right.
Anyways, this is what I'm thinking. Is Justin over there, by the way?
Yeah, I am. So that seems to align pretty closely with Josh's deep understanding of sound and sound waves and frequency. How do you think that information coincides with your knowledge regarding that? I imagine you've had some thoughts.
Do you remember the question I asked you on WhatsApp?
No, I do remember, but I don't remember exactly how you phrased it. But
okay, the question, because you said sound, because you said Josh, we were talking about stuff, and at some point I told Justin, what do you think about, we get in contact, we get in touch with some extraterrestrial intelligence or civilization or a single alien or whatever. someone who is not from Earth. They get in touch, they get in contact with us. So we have to choose an ambassador to represent the entire planet. That includes all the plants and animals and humans as well. Planet as a whole. Who would you choose? Or what would you choose? And why?
Okay, let's go. But I do want to put my stake in the ground as saying we have the ability to go back to that conversation and get Josh's opinion sometime in the future. I just want to put that carrot in the ground. But let's move forward. Josh, who do we bring forward to do that?
As an entire representation of Earth, and it's got to be a human. So it's a human that I'm going to put up as.
No, it doesn't.
Geez, that's pretty rough.
Or what language should they be proficient in? Because we're going to use a language to communicate with them.
So first
Music.
of all,
I see where this is going. I'd say a drummer, like a rhythmic, something rhythmic, because rhythms I think would be as close to universal as we could expect.
So this has actually been asked from. I don't know if I should say NASA, but definitely people who experiment with space. And this has actually been done, right? I believe they played Dark Side of the Moon out in space.
With the Voyager recordings, because those are kind of our ambassador for Earth.
Right. And then there's been, I think, light frequencies that they have, in kind of in Morse code out into space.
Let me tell you my point of view.
Yeah.
I think something that is very unique to this planet is our atmosphere. Other planets have their atmosphere as well, but most of life, at least plants and animals, are here and they're kind of living in it and they're kind of using it in a certain way, that we have our atmosphere, a gas. And because of this atmosphere, we have vocal cords that we can vibrate the atmosphere. And we can hear sound. And we can even create music. And music is directly related to, I think music is very natural language of this planet. The birds sing, the animals kind of create rhythmic sounds and stuff. I think it should be a musician or someone who knows music extensively. I think it's very native to this planet. The understanding of music. For example, you cannot have music on the moon, or you can have it, but you cannot have it as diverse as it is here on the earth.
I could answer it for Socrates if you'd like. Socrates would say that it would be harmonious music as well, and music that uses harmonics and not, and I'm going to butcher this, dithyrambic type of music, which is music that was considered the rock of the time, right? Which is something that doesn't have harmonies for each other. That's how Socrates would look at that. As a matter of fact, he looked at that as something virtuous, actually, as something that when a pursuit of life, as far as music was a worthy pursuit of somebody's existence and life in a virtuous pursuit of life. Josh has dedicated himself to music for his entire life, and actually I think he's also dedicated himself to helping people create non-harmonic music as well.
I know, I was gonna say it's usually made for a discordant. Yeah, I don't know if Socrates would approve of the music that people make with our products, but that would make sense. I mean, what you're getting at though, yeah, because music from all over, almost every culture uses these ratios, these harmonic ratios and whatnot, from Pythagoras and all over the place. And that's interesting from a human, like a very human standpoint, because they evolved separately and they still use these similar or identical frequency ratios in the music. I mean, there are always variations and whatnot, but it's still octaves, fifths are very common. So it would make sense to send, yeah, maybe like a singer or an amazing instrumentalist as a representative of Earth, since the frequencies and relationships between those that they use could be understood by the aliens and would be very representative of human music
Yeah.
as a whole.
Yeah, this was actually also why I tried to get Jerome onto this as well, because he's a conductor of the Santa Rosa Symphony.
I mean, I said Jerome and I just argue about, or all of us just argue about what kind of musician would be best to represent Earth.
Yeah, we should all actually put our stake in the ground, right? But what's interesting, there's another tangent that you can go with that conversation, and not to go back to the ancient Greek philosophers again, right? But so Protagoras came around, and he was very much in the school of carpe diem, or seeds a day, and so he's the one that came up with the phrase of "man is a measure of all things," right? So he was saying that if there is knowledge that I do know, then my perspective is my own personal truth, and I shall not cloud my decision making with further complexity, as the answer is too abstract and cannot be uniformly agreed upon, and life is essentially too short, right? So trying to figure out what is actually virtuous, and actually this exact discussion that we're talking about here, and these other types of discoveries of the world, he was looking at as saying, well, actually, my discovery of the world is based on my own perception and my own perspective. And so from what I ingest is my discovery of the world, right? And so other, and by the way, then he goes on to essentially use, so his job, actually, he was a sophist. And so his job was essentially the beginning of a lawyer, right? And so he was actually teaching people debating skills. And they were a very litigious society at that point in time, right? And so he's essentially teaching people how to argue their way out of anything. And that was a great argument. He ends up getting killed when he argues that about religion, right? That's going too far, as saying that my perception of religion is of my own, and therefore it shouldn't go beyond that. But it goes on to, and actually this is based off of one of our conversations, but then, and so it goes on to communication, right? And how we communicate things. And Plato is saying that there's a group of people, and all of those with differing opinions about a single event, then there cannot be multiple truths to exist. So therefore, what he's trying to say is that a word, and so essentially what you're saying is, what language, how do we speak to these people, right? Our words are symbolic. And so the goal of somebody like Plato or Socrates is, when they create words, is the goal is that person, when they digest that word, that they understand exactly the meaning of what that person is trying to tell them. Although we know that that's not actually the meaning that we interpret. We interpret our own meaning and perception of the words that that person is saying. So kind of based off of what you're talking about, if we're trying to talk to another extraterrestrial, how do we convey a message that they understand when we can't even truly understand the emphasis of what we're trying to say to each other, right? In the symbolic form of our own language is kind of what you're referring to. And I think what you're referring to is that harmonics are a way of overcoming, or maybe showing a pure form of communication between individuals. Maybe not harmonics, but frequency is a way of speaking to people in a pure form than the symbolic nature that we use for words, which is a little clunky because we know that even if it's my brother, even if it's my mother, I was raised by this person, she gives me some type of emphasis with her voice, I'm still not going to perceive it. It's going to be closer, but I'm still not going to perceive it exactly how those words are supposed to lay, right? And I think that gets kind of into what you're referring to, right?
Yes, you're right. But while I was listening to you, I kind of updated my thinking about communication. That's very interesting.
That's not fair.
No, your words spoke to him, and your words didn't convey to him what you were speaking. But he, in his own experience, through your words, did have thoughts of his own, and it changed his idea about communication. Yeah.
Not changed, but came to an understanding of something else.
Well,
interesting. I'm surprised at the moment.
I know what you mean. No, I hadn't really thought. I mean, I've thought about it before, but in a lot of ways. But just thinking about directly how we never actually can convey thoughts to one another. How would that even work? Well, if we could actually transmute a thought to someone else, well, what is a thought? It's like a firing of a collection of neurons, but we have different structures and shaped neurons in each of our heads. So even if we could try to do it brain to brain directly and transmit a thought as it exists, it wouldn't be the same thought.
For example, while I'm talking to you guys here, there's this Wi-Fi signal going inside the room. And at some level, at somewhere in my physical body or in my brain, it should interfere with me to a certain extent. There should at least be some location or some molecule or molecules in my body which could interact with 2.4 gigahertz of signal. That carries some information and some encoding with it as well. So it's just tick, 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 ticking me. Plus, I'm hearing your voice. You're on the other side of the planet.
So this is a question for Josh. So how do we use digital signal processing? So digital signal processing is the filtering of our words and our
I'll
language.
have to pee before you start.
Guess we can wait. We can wait for him to come back again.
Yeah.
But yeah, think about that. I think that's on you, actually.
It's just going to turn into us talking about 5G.
Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. He might know about Bluetooth, that Bluetooth question that I had, that I don't think the Bluetooth we have today is the same as the Bluetooth before.
I think it is, though. Or I think it's like the same frequency spec. I'm not positive, but I would guess that it was. I would wager. But I also agree that it's suspicious that it's different, because I agree that it acts different. So I would use DSP on like through the air magnetic waves.
Yeah, like
or on human thought.
Yeah, like a more, well, first of all, let's wait. Let's hear your answer.
All right. I like this.
You're on the clock.
Good. I can DSP anything.
Let me first explain what DSP is too, though. So before we get into it, so I'll do that first, and then I have to go to class at 4. By the way, I think this is going to be our longest session. When I looked at the time and it was already 3 p.m., I couldn't believe it. Okay.